We have an interesting subject this morning that comes to our attention frequently. Nearly every male brings a request for an introduction to a reputable religious teacher. People want to know where to go, who to find, what to join and what not to join. These letters come in constantly, and also phone messages and personal requests. As you probably realize, our organization does not carry on that aspect of the situation. We do not endorse and we do not support any particular individuals or groups. And the support for this point, I think we all need to understand rather carefully. In our search for realities, we have to depend upon some rules, some pattern of plans, purposes, requirements, and fortunately there are such rules, and they are the same in all parts of the world. The teachings of the Arhats of China and the Adepts of Europe, the alchemists, the Gnostics, all of these different groups, the esoteric sections in all cases are the same in principle, and very largely the same in practices, for the simple reason that, like the science of medicine, wherever you are, if you have a certain ailment, you have to take the remedy that is indicated. And anyone seeking truth must follow the path, must follow the ancient, eternal, unchangeable way, because it has to do largely, in fact completely, with the individual himself. In the adept tradition in Europe, we have the alchemistical disciplines, the series of processes which lead to the transmutations of base metals. These metals being represented by the planets and by the chemical formulas that are found in the ancient alchemical manuscripts. In the Asiatic side, in Buddhism, or Taoism, Confucianism, Hinduism, we find also that arhatship or adeptship is the result of a specialized discipline. It is a process dependent for its success upon the individual himself. In the Eastern and Western systems, we have the human personality divided into 4 distinct levels. These levels manifest in our physical life as faculties, powers, functions. The lowest of the levels is the physical. Above that is the energy field. Above that is the emotional sphere. And beyond that, in turn, is the mental. These constitute a ladder of 4 rungs, up which the neophyte must climb in order to reach the higher atmosphere, which is the quintessence of the alchemist, the pure Buddhi of the Buddhist philosophy, the symbol of perfect enlightenment. Now, in order to understand this, we must also realize that no one can grow for anyone else. There is no possibility of shifting the responsibility of growth upon a teacher, upon a formula in the ordinary sense, or upon any group of factors. Growth is simply a process of growing. Now, we are all, as non-initiated souls, like children passing gradually from adolescence to maturity. The great teachers of the past instructed us. They were our ancestral guides. Now we must start out on our own. And one of the problems that we face in the present generation is this matter of trying to help young people to go out on their own. First of all, they are going to anyway, because parental influence is no longer strong enough to hold them. You can teach them whatever you want to, but in the long run, most of them will do what they intend to do. Maybe some of them will have difficult experiences and will have to grow through suffering. Others find themselves more independently and become highly desirable citizens. But each has to find its own way by means of the characteristics, the basic integrities with which it is endowed. So when we start to work with the problem of teaching, to try to find a teacher, we know that all a teacher can do is to tell the individual to do certain things. He cannot make anyone do these things. And he can only say, if you wish a certain result, you must be set in motion the causes which will result in that effect. If you are not willing to cause it, you cannot have it. No one else can have it for you. The gods will not bestow it. Each individual must earn his own destiny, must fulfill the plan for which he was intended, as part of a system that has as its objective the enlightenment of everything that lives. This enlightenment, however, is a completely individual responsibility. Now, it is possible for a person to become inspired by association with desirable types of thinkers and believers, the meeting of the individual with other persons of high resolve, high intention, noble experience in life. All these things are objective helps, but they do not contribute the actual substance. All they can possibly do is inspire. This is all any teacher can do, is to inspire the individual to do his own job. And anyone promising other than that should be approached with due caution, because of the fact that though most people are looking for someone to give them a painless solution for the mysteries and miseries of existence. We want to do mostly what we please, but we want to find a way of doing it and escape the consequences of our mistakes. This is just not possible. And no matter how much is claimed, the fact remains that each individual must live out his own pattern of purposes. There are rough instructions, however, and some of them are pretty rough, as to how this is done. One of the first is to realize this set of 4 steps, and to realize that the life of sanctity begins at the bottom of these steps and ascends gradually. And in the Eastern system, in the system of the Yoga and the Arhats and the Lohans of China, the Taoist system, and also the Muslim mysticism, the simple fact is that all growth begins with the proper development and integrity of the physical body. The physical body must become the pedestal or base upon which the project is situated or fixed. So the aspirant begins by considering the means by means of which the physical body can be brought into the closest possible relationship with normalcy and harmony. This means that any destructive habit which endangers the body blocks the entire procedure. The individual cannot go along and have a little marijuana now and then and accomplish the things he wants to accomplish. He cannot, it's not possible. The physical body must come first. Now, your ascetics, even in the Old Testament and in most of religions, went out into the wilderness and there meditated and prayed in solitude. We have a wilderness also, but it's called chaos. It's where we live now, and if anything could be more a wilderness, we don't know. This is what the Muslim calls the desert of waiting, the place where everything now lacks the quietude that we associate with the deserts, the mountains, and the valleys. Therefore, we cannot really go away and simply devote our lives to that kind of physical therapy. Naturally, if we could get out of the city, get away from the smog, get rid of our debtors, all these things, it would help. But most persons are not willing to make such sacrifices. So the physical problem has to be solved as it is in Mahayana Buddhism, not by going into the desert and meditating and praying, but facing each day with an increasing degree of internal enlightenment. In other words, the physical world must be conquered in the person. He must find ways of living in this material existence without being damaged by it. Now, this is hard to think about because almost anything we do will damage us. But the thing that damages us most is when we have to do what we do not want to do. Therefore, the beginning of the correction is to stop not wanting to do that which is necessary. We can avoid certain pitfalls by not setting the causes in motion. We can keep the body in the best condition as long as we can by moderate living. We can also make sure that it has proper ventilation, proper nutrition, and has opportunities for peace, quietude, and sleep. One of the things that the old systems always point out is the importance of keeping away from artificial drugs to produce the effects that are desired. It cannot be entirely followed, but we should not attempt to bring the body under control by doping it. It has to be done by the intelligence of the individual, who is the caretaker of that body and is therefore responsible for its functions. He must decide that the body is a younger brother to the mind, and that it is the duty of the elder brother to guard and protect the younger brother. It is the duty of the individual never to neglect the physical requirements of living, but never to accept the extravagances which come from lack of insight. The great life, the enlightened life, must be normal, but it must also be simple. A simple and direct life. Extravagance has a tendency to damage the body as well as the rest of the organism. The process of living in this body only to use it for the fulfillment of self-centered ambitions and purposes is wrong. The body is the servant of an individual who presumably knows what he's doing. And if the person doesn't know, the body cannot follow the leadership. And without leadership, the body falls apart. So the beginning of the road that leads to enlightenment is to settle down quietly and take whatever time is necessary to make a friend of the body for the first time perhaps in our lives. Make the body a valuable and important member of our personal collective. Give the body its rights and its dues. Do not dissipate it. Do not damage it. Do not exhaust it on useless enterprises. The body is willing to be martyred to a great purpose, but never to a small one. Therefore, the body must be considered first. This means a gradual modification of many attitudes that we have. Luxuries may be more damaging to the body than they are of use, but the body endures them because the mind or the emotions wants them. And wherever the mind and the emotions lead the body to excess, there is damage. This must be carefully watched and regulated, or we will get into trouble. Now, beyond the body comes the second area, which only is workable, usable, and possible if the body has already been brought into order. We must ascend, always building upon a solid foundation. Until we have solved the lower, we cannot pass to something higher. Assuming we have regulated the body, that we have given it all that it needs, but never for a moment sacrificed its well-being for some other purpose of our own, unless that sacrifice is justified by moral expediency, by the need to give something beyond our normal. The individual who gives their life to save another life has not disfigured the body. They have given it to a purpose that is higher. That which is higher is always the basis of the realities and the right values of things. But assuming that we now live simply, that we are not subject to extravagances, that we are not dissipated, and that the body is not disturbed by any external situation, that the body is not working for something, not working for something that is worthwhile, that it is supporting an extravagance of the mind and not the need of its own integrities. So the body being settled, we pass to the second level, assuming that the body has now been disciplined as the first step of discipleship. The energy fields of vital body, etheric double of the physical,